The Phenomenological Standpoint, written by Felipe Bautista. What I desire to discuss in the present discourse is the essence and significance of what I call the phenomenological standpoint. What is the phenomenological standpoint? To comprehend what the phenomenological standpoint is, it will be useful to discuss the distinction Gurdjieff introduced between the different types of men, ranging from man number 1 to man number 7. In the present context, man number 1 through man number 6 thinks of himself as a man with this or that obligation, as a man with these or those beliefs. In other words, if I identify as a man, then I am man number 1 through 6. Man number 7, in turn, is different, because he no longer identifies at all as a man. To attain the status of man number 7 is to become aware that one is consciousness interacting with itself. To put it more clearly, when man number 1 through 6 looks at a house, at a mountain, at a river, or at any empirical spatial object, he distinguishes himself from that house, from that mountain, from that river, from that empirical spatial object. Man number 1 through 6, in other words, believes that the house, the mountain, the river, or the empirical spatial object he perceives is not himself. In turn, man number 7 has attained enlightenment. Man number 7, that is, recognizes that he is not a man but a consciousness which is constructing the representations of a house, of a mountain, of a river, of empirical spatial objects within itself. In other words, the name man number 7 is a complete misnomer, because, properly speaking, man number 7 involves the recognition that one is not a man, but that one is a consciousness studying itself, studying its own immanent representations, a consciousness only pretending to be a man. If I think of myself as a man who has these or those obligations, then I am in Maya. I am, that is, man number 1 through 6. However, if I recognize that I am a consciousness that is interacting with its own immanent representations, using the term representations to refer to what Kant called Vorstellungen, then I am man number 7. That is, then I have realized the phenomenological standpoint. The phenomenological standpoint is that standpoint I reach when I discover that I am a consciousness observing its own modifications. From the phenomenological standpoint, I am not necessarily a man, but a consciousness playing the role of a man, just like Laurence Olivier plays the role of Hamlet. Man number 1 through 6 is the equivalent of Laurence Olivier forgetting that he is not Hamlet. That is, forgetting that he only happens to be playing the role of Hamlet. Man 1 through 6, in other words, is consciousness forgetting that it is not a man, forgetting that it only happens to be playing the role of a man. Zhuangzi famously introduced the question of whether he may actually be a butterfly dreaming of being a man. If we understand this Zhuangzi example, then we can understand what the phenomenological standpoint is. Being in the phenomenological standpoint means that one looks at one's own human body and recognizes that it is only a set of representations arising in consciousness. As wrote Immanuel Kant in his Prolegomena, all bodies, together with the space in which they are, must be considered nothing but mere representations in us, and exist nowhere but in our thoughts. Man number 1 through 6 is caught up in Maya. He really believes that he is a man, when it is logically possible that suddenly he will awaken to discover that, for all that, he is actually only a butterfly that was only dreaming of being a man. Furthermore, a butterfly that lives in a world where neither mankind nor the planet Earth ever arose. Man number 7, in turn, has attained moksha. That is, he has attained enlightenment. Man number 7 has realized, that is, that he is not a man, but a consciousness that simply happens to be rendering representations for its own entertainment. Man number 7 is not attached to being a man, and he does not identify as a man, because he is aware that he may be not only a butterfly dreaming of being a man, but aware that he is a consciousness entertaining itself with immanent representations. I bring up the phenomenological standpoint because I want to discuss the two types of philosophy that there can be. There is the philosophy of man, number 1 through 6, and then there is the philosophy of man number 7. The philosophy of man number 1 through 6 is philosophy done from the standpoint of Maya. Man number 1 through 6, when he does philosophy, brings into his philosophizing his human beliefs, such that, hence, his philosophy involves hypotheses about other minds and about an external world out there beyond my individual mind. The philosophy of man number 1 through 6 will be as if Hamlet did philosophy in the context of the play, about what there is beyond the play itself. In other words, because man number 1 through 6 still believes that he is a man amongst other men, his philosophy will involve hypotheses that attempt to account for other minds, and that attempt to account for an external world out there, beyond my individual mind. For all his hypothesizing about other minds and an external world out there, beyond my individual mind, man number 1 through 6 may suddenly awaken to discover that he is actually a butterfly that was only dreaming of being a man. Furthermore, a butterfly that lives in a world where neither mankind nor the planet Earth ever arose. In other words, man number 1 through 6 is in Maya. He thinks that the play is reality. In a word, the philosophy of man number 1 through 6 is speculative metaphysics of the transcendent variety. Speculation about what there is beyond one's own consciousness activity. That is, if there is anything at all beyond one's consciousness activity. In turn, the philosophy of man number 7 is inevitably immanent, as opposed to transcendent, and is focused on studying consciousness from within, rather than trying to speculate about what, if anything, there is external to the immediacy of consciousness. Man number 7, as we have seen, is not really a man so much as he is consciousness aware of itself as consciousness. Man number 7 has attained the realization that he is not any particular representation in consciousness, for example, some empirical human body. Man number 7 has attained the realization that he is a consciousness that is ouroborically interacting with itself. The type of philosophy that man number 7 does, therefore, will be totally different from the type of philosophy that man number 1 through 6 does. Man number 7 is not at all concerned with what there is external to the present immediacy of consciousness. Man number 7 is concerned with analyzing the immediacy of consciousness itself. For man number 7, the aim of his philosophizing is modest but thorough self-knowledge, rather than speculation about what there is beyond the immediacy of consciousness. The philosophizing of man number 7 involves not only the awareness that one is a consciousness entertaining itself with its own immanent representations, but the act of consciousness studying how it entertains itself with its own immanent representations. If you are convinced that you are a man, then you are caught up in Maya. You are like Laurence Olivier, who is so caught up in playing the role of Hamlet that he has completely forgotten that he is Laurence Olivier. However, if you have attained the awareness that you are a consciousness, then you have realized moksha. You are, then, like the Laurence Olivier who, despite playing the role of Hamlet, has the immediate awareness that Hamlet is merely a role that he happens to be playing. You are, that is, a consciousness that has the immediate awareness that it only happens to be playing the role of being a man, a consciousness that only happens to be entertaining itself with a play composed of its own immanent representations. If you think you are a man, then you are deeply caught up in Maya. However, if you obtain the awareness that you are a consciousness entertaining itself with its own immanent representations, then you have entered the domain of moksha. Man 1 through 6 is afraid of the possibility of solipsism. Hence, he clings tightly to his beliefs in other minds and a mind-independent world in his philosophizing. In turn, man number 7 has obtained the realization that he is a consciousness that cannot ever escape its own sphere of representations, such that the only possible philosophy for man number 7 involves abandoning all hypotheses about other minds and about mind-independent worlds, and involves a focus on studying consciousness from within, involves consciousness studying itself and how it entertains itself as it entertains itself. This is not to endorse solipsism. Concerning whether there are other minds or mind-independent worlds, man number 7 remains agnostic. The key point here is that the philosophy of man number 7 involves studying consciousness from within, studying how consciousness unfolds and entertains itself, all with the awareness that I am this consciousness. The difference between man number 1 through 6 and man number 7 is that the latter treats any experience the same, whether he is brewing a cup of tea or having an intense psychedelic episode brought about by the use of hallucinogens. For man number 7 is intimately aware that he is consciousness aware of itself now, as the now of consciousness. Whereas man number 1 through 6 is entertained by the representations, caught up in Maya, unaware that he is not the role, the man, but that he is the actor, consciousness. To enter the phenomenological standpoint, therefore, one must see past the Maya. One must become aware that I am this consciousness now ouroborically interacting with itself, entertaining itself with its own immanent representations. To enter the phenomenological standpoint, therefore, I must abandon all my beliefs about other minds and mind-independent worlds and instead focus on studying consciousness from within.